There's a certain peace that comes with owning land, a kind of quiet pride that settles in your bones when you wake up to the sound of roosters and the golden light of dawn spilling over acres of green. My farm sat on the edge of a sprawling development, a patchwork of fields and fences that had been in my family for generations, long before the first cookie-cutter houses and manicured lawns crept up to the property line. I'd always kept to myself, tending my crops and livestock, waving politely to the neighbors who jogged past on the weekends, and minding my own business. But as the years went by and the development grew, so did the reach of the Homeowners Association, the HOA. At first, it was little things. A letter about the unsightly tractor park near the barn, a complaint about the smell of manure drifting over the fence, a warning about the unauthorized chicken coop that had stood in the same spot since my grandfather's time. I shrugged it off, figuring it was just the price of progress. But the letters kept coming, each one more insistent than the last. Then the visits started. At first, it was just a couple of HOA officers in their crisp uniforms, clipboards in hand, knocking on my door with 4 smiles and a list of concerns. They'd walk the perimeter of my property, peering over the fence, jotting down notes, and asking questions that made it clear they didn't understand or care about the rhythms of farm life. I tried to be patient, explaining that my land wasn't part of their association, that I'd never signed any agreement, that my property was grandfathered in long before the HOA existed. But they didn't want to hear it. We're just trying to maintain community standards, they'd say, as if my fields and barns were a threat to their perfect lawns and pastel mailboxes. The trespassing got worse. I'd find HOA officers wandering through my fields, snapping photos of my equipment, measuring the height of my fences, even poking around my barn when they thought I wasn't looking. I confronted them more than once, asking them, sometimes politely, sometimes not, to stay off my land. Each time, they claimed they were inspecting for violations or responding to complaints. It didn't matter that I wasn't a member, that their rules didn't apply to me. They acted as if my farm was theirs to police. The final straw came one afternoon when I caught 2 officers in the middle of my pasture, arguing over whether my cows were too close to the property line. I'd had enough. I called the sheriff, who confirmed what I already knew. The HOA had no authority on my land. But the officers just shrugged off the warning, returning a week later with even more determination. That night, as I sat on my porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized I had a choice. I could keep fighting a losing battle, or I could take matters into my own hands. I spent the next week researching, calling suppliers, and talking to other farmers who dealt with similar problems. The answer was simple: electric fences, not the kind that could hurt anyone, just enough of a jolt to make it clear that my property was off limits. I installed a new fencing myself, running wires along the perimeter, posting clear signs every few yards. Private property. Electric fence. Do not enter. It was legal, safe, and, most importantly, effective. The first time the HOA officers returned, they didn't notice the new setup. I watched from the porch as one of them reached for the fence, only to yelp and jump back, shaking his hand and glaring at the warning sign. His partner tried to play it cool, but the message was clear. This was no longer their playground. Word spread quickly. The HOA sent me a furious letter threatening legal action, but I knew my rights. I sent them a copy of the property deed, highlighted the boundaries, and attached a copy of the sheriff's statement. "You are not authorized to enter my land," I wrote. "Any further trespassing will be reported." The letters stopped. The visits stopped. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace return to my farm. But the story didn't end there. The neighbors started asking questions, curious about the new fences and the sudden absence of HOA patrols. Some were supportive, others skeptical, but all of them wanted to know how I'd managed to stand up to the association. I told them the truth. You have to know your rights, and you have to be willing to defend them. The farm became a symbol of resistance, a reminder that not all land could be tamed by rules and regulations. And as the seasons changed and the fields turned from green to gold, I realized that sometimes the best way to protect what you love is to draw a line and make sure everyone knows you mean it. The weeks that followed were studying contrasts. On one side of my electric fence, life on the farm returned to its familiar, peaceful rhythm, while on the other, the HOA frustration simmered just beneath the surface of every neighborhood gathering and board meeting. I could sense the shift in the air whenever I drove my old pickup into town or stopped by the local feed store. Some neighbors greeted me with new respect, a few even with a conspiratorial wink, as if I'd done what they'd always dreamed of but never dared. Others, especially those who sat on the HOA board or prided themselves on their perfect lawns, looked at me with a mix of suspicion and resentment, as if my refusal to bow to their authority was a threat to the order they'd worked so hard to build. I didn't mind. I'd never been one for small talk or social politics, and the farm kept me busy enough. But I couldn't help noticing how the story of the electric fence took on a life of its own. It started with whispers. "Did you hear what he did?" And soon became the stuff of local legend. Some said I'd electrified the whole property. Others claimed I'd installed cameras and motion sensors. And a few even joked that I had a pack of guard dogs patrolling the fields at night. The truth was simpler, but the effect was undeniable. The HOA officers stopped coming. For the first time in years, I could walk my land without worrying about someone lurking in the hedgerows or snapping photos of my barn. I spent my days fixing fences, tending crops, and caring for the animals, the quiet broken only by the occasional visit from friends or family. But the peace didn't last forever. One afternoon, as I was repairing a section of fence near the road, I noticed a group of HOA board members gather at the edge of my property, their arms crossed and faces set in grim determination. They didn't try to cross the fence, but their message was clear. They weren't done with me yet. That evening, I received a certified letter from the HOA's attorney, accusing me of creating a public hazard and endangering the safety of the community. They demanded I remove the electric fence immediately or face legal action. I read the letter twice, then called my own lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, who'd helped my family with land disputes for years. She laughed when I told her the story. "They don't have a leg to stand on," she assured me. "As long as your fence is on your property and properly marked, you're within your rights. Let them huff and puff." Still, the threat of a lawsuit hung over me like a storm cloud. I doubled down on making sure every inch of the fence was up to code, checking the voltage, replacing warn signs, and even inviting the county inspector to take a look. He gave me a thumbs up and a knowing smile. "You're good," he said. "Just don't let the voltage get too high and you'll be fine." The HOA, frustrated by their lack of progress, tried a new tactic: public shaming. At the next board meeting, they devoted an entire agenda item to my dangerous and unsightly fence, inviting residents to voice their concerns. A few did, complaining about the look of the wires or the threat to children who might wander too close. But others spoke up in my defense, pointing out that the real issue was the HOA's repeated trespassing and refusal to respect property lines. The debate grew heated, with voices raised and tempers flaring, until finally the board president called for order. "We may not like it," he said, "but the law is clear. We can't force them to take it down." The meeting ended in a stalemate, but the message was clear. I wasn't alone. More and more neighbors began to question the HOA's authority, asking why they spent so much time policing the farm when there were real issues, like potholes, streetlights, and playground repairs, that needed attention. The electric fence became a symbol, not just of my stubbornness, but of the limits of power and the importance of standing up for your rights. As summer turned to fall and the fields ripened with the promise of harvest, I felt a new sense of belonging in the community. I hadn't set out to start a movement, but sometimes all it takes is one person drawing a line for others to realize they can do the same. As autumn settled in and the leaves along the property line turned gold and red, the farm felt more like a sanctuary than ever. The electric fence, once a point of controversy, had become a quiet boundary that everyone respected, even if they didn't like it. I noticed fewer cars slowing down to gawk, fewer strangers wandering too close, and a new kind of peace in my daily routines. The animals seemed calmer, the crops thrived, and I found myself with more time to focus on the things that mattered: repairing the old barn roof, teaching my nephew how to drive the tractor, and sharing long, slow dinners with friends who came out to escape the bustle of the development. But the HOA wasn't ready to let the matter drop. Their frustration simmered in the background, showing up in small ways. A neighbor who used a wave now looked away. A few anonymous complaints about unsightly farm equipment, or unpleasant odors made their way to the county office, and the HOA newsletter ran a thinly veiled editorial about the importance of community standards. I ignored most of it, but I couldn't ignore the growing sense that the farm had become a symbol in a larger struggle, one about independence, tradition, and the right to live differently. One Saturday, I was surprised to find a group of local high school students at my gate, clipboards in hand. They were working on a civics project about property rights and had heard about the electric fence. I invited them in, gave them a tour, and answered their questions as honestly as I could. They were curious, respectful, and eager to learn, and by the end of the afternoon, I realized that my story had become a lesson for the next generation. "Why do you think the HOA kept coming onto your land?" one girl asked. I thought for a moment before answering. Sometimes, people get so used to being in charge that they forget where their authority ends. It's important to know your rights, and it's just as important to stand up for them, peacefully but firmly. The students took notes, snapped a few photos with my permission, and promised to send me a copy of their report. That evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset behind the barn, I felt a sense of hope. Maybe the fence wasn't just about keeping people out. Maybe it was about starting a conversation. The next week, the local paper ran a story about the farm, the HOA, and the electric fence. The reporter was fair, interviewing both sides and highlighting the legal facts as well as the emotions involved. The article sparked a flood of letters to the editor, some supportive, some critical, but all passionate. A few neighbors stopped by to thank me for standing up to the HOA, sharing their own stories of overreach and frustration. Others kept their distance, but the hostility seemed to fade as the months passed. The HOA, perhaps realizing they were losing the battle for public opinion, shifted their focus to more pressing issues, fixing the community pool, organizing a fall festival, and finally addressing the potholes that had plagued the main road for years. I was invited to the festival, and though I hesitated at first, I decided to go. I brought a basket of fresh produce from the farm, and to my surprise, people welcomed me warmly. The board president even shook my hand, admitting with a rueful smile that maybe we got a little carried away. The festival was a turning point. The electric fence was still there, but it was no longer a source of conflict. It was just part of the landscape, a reminder of boundaries and the importance of respecting them. I realized that the real victory wasn't in keeping the HOA out, but in finding a way to coexist, each of us with our own space, our own rules, and a new understanding of what it meant to be neighbors. Winter arrived quietly, blanketing the fields in frost and lending the farm a hush that made every sunrise feel like a fresh start. The electric fence, now dusted with ice crystals, glinted in the morning light, a silent but steadfast boundary that had come to represent more than just a line in the dirt. It was a symbol of standing up for what was right, of knowing where you end and someone else begins, and of the hard-won peace that comes from refusing to be pushed around. The HOA, perhaps tired of fighting a battle they couldn't win, finally seemed to accept the new normal. Their newsletters shifted focus to holiday events and community service projects, and the board meetings, once dominated by heated debates about my property, now centered on things like snow removal and neighborhood watch programs. I found myself invited to more gatherings, and while some old wounds lingered, most people seemed ready to move on. At the winter potluck, I brought homemade bread and jars of honey from my hives, and was surprised by how many people stopped to chat, ask about the farm, or share a laugh about the legendary fence. Even the most stubborn board members seemed to soften, a few even admitting that the whole ordeal had taught them something about boundaries, both literal and figurative. I realized that, in a strange way, the conflict had brought the community closer. People were more willing to talk, to listen, and to respect each other's differences. The high school students who'd visited in the fall sent me a copy of their project, which had earned top marks and sparked a lively debate in their class about property rights and the limits of authority. I was invited to speak at the school, and though public speaking wasn't my favorite thing, I agreed. Standing in front of those students, I told them what I'd learned, that it's not enough to know your rights. You have to be willing to defend them, and to do so with respect and patience, even when it's hard. I told them that real change doesn't come from anger or confrontation, but from persistence, clarity, and a willingness to stand your ground without losing your humanity. As the year drew to a close, I looked back on everything that happened, The trespassing, the letters, the threats, the fence, and the slow, sometimes painful process of finding common ground. I realized that the farm was stronger for it, and so was I. The electric fence still hummed quietly along the property line, but it was no longer a barrier to connection. It was a reminder that boundaries, when respected, can actually bring people together. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks sparkled over the development and the farm animals huddled in their warm barns, I stood at the edge of my land, hand resting on the fence post, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. I was grateful for the land, for the lessons, and for the neighbors who had, in their own way, helped me rediscover the value of community. I knew there would always be challenges, new rules, new faces, new misunderstandings, but I also knew that I was ready for them. The farm was my home, and I would protect it, not with anger or isolation, but with the quiet strength that comes from knowing who you are and what you stand for. And as the first snowflakes of the new year drifted down, I smiled, knowing that whatever came next, I and my farm would be just fine.